Christmas in Lagos was always a spectacle. The streets glistened with colorful lights, and the air vibrated with laughter and the aroma of fried chicken and jollof rice. It was Nnenna's first Christmas in the bustling city, and she couldn't help but marvel at the sheer energy. Having recently moved from her quiet village in Enugu, she was eager to immerse herself in the city's culture. A week before Christmas, her neighbor, Mrs. Funmi, extended an invitation. Funmi was the kind of woman who commanded attention. Her gold bangles jiggled with every gesture, and her loud, infectious laughter could be heard even behind closed doors. You must come to my Christmas party, Funmi said, her eyes twinkling. It will be the talk of the neighborhood. At first, Nnenna hesitated. She barely knew Funmi and had heard some unsettling gossip about her. Rumors swirled that Funmi's lavish lifestyle was built on mysterious sources of wealth. Yet Funmi's insistence won her over. Don't spend Christmas alone, Funmi added, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. It's a time for joy. As the days passed, Nnenna noticed strange things about Funmi's household. Delivery trucks arrived at odd hours, unloading crates of goods. By night, the house was unnaturally quiet, almost as though its usual bustle was a facade. But Nnenna brushed off her unease. Lagos was full of eccentricities, she told herself. When Christmas Day arrived, Nnenna dressed in her finest Ankara and headed to Funmi's house. The compound was alive with laughter and music, yet as she stepped through the gates, an inexplicable chill settled over her. Something wasn't right, but she couldn't put her finger on it. The day before Christmas, Nnenna decided to drop by Funmi's house to offer help. The compound was a whirlwind of activity. Workers hurried about, carrying trays of goods, crates of drinks, and decorations. Funmi stood in the center of it all, backing orders with the precision of a general. Nnenna, you came at the perfect time, Funmi exclaimed, pulling her into the house. The interior was even more chaotic. The kitchen smelled of rice spices, grilled meat, and freshly baked bread. Yet, underneath it all lingered a metallic tang that made Nnenna's stomach churn. Let me help, Nnenna offered. Funmi handed her a bowl of vegetable to chop. As they walked, Nnenna noticed a peculiar detail. Funmi was separating ingredients into two distinct groups. One batch went into the pot, shimmering on the stove, while the other ones was carefully packed away. What is that for? Nnenna asked, gesturing towards the second badge. Funmi smiled faltered for a split second before she replied, Special guest is an old Lagos tradition. Her tone was light, but her eyes held a warning. Nnenna felt her unease grow, but decided not to press further. Later that evening, as Nnenna prepared to leave, she caught sip of a large black bag being dragged into the backyard. What's in there? She asked casually. Funmi's response was sipped and caught Christmas decorations. But the weight of the bag and the effort it took to move it told a different story. Christmas morning arrived with fanfare. The streets of Lagos were alive with laughter, music, and the chatter of children showing off their new clothes. Nnenna arrived at Funmi's house to find the party in full swing. Guests mined about, balancing plates of steaming food and cups of fine wine. The food was as promised, exceptional. Nnenna couldn't remember the last time she tasted such perfectly styled jollof rice. She allowed herself to relax, enjoy the music and the company. Yet her curiosity about Funmi's special guests remained. At one point, she noticed a table set apart from the rest. 5 men and women sat there. Their faces sullen despite the festivities. They ate with an intensity that bordered on disturbing. Their plates piled high with food. Nnenna moved closer, curious to engage them in conversation. Before she could reach the table, Funmi intercepted her. Nnenna, come. You must try this goat pepper soup, Funmi said, steering her towards another group. Her grip was firm, and her tone left no room for argument. Nnenna smiled politely but felt a growing sense of unease. As the day wore on, Nnenna observed more oddities. The special guest avoided mingling with others and left abruptly before sunset. Funmi seemed relieved when they were gone, her demeanor shifting back to her usual cheerfulness. But Nnenna couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was unfolding. As the party wound down, Nnenna offered to stay and help with the cleanup. Funmi waved off the suggestion, but Nnenna insisted. The other guests had left, and the one slightly compound now felt very quiet. In the kitchen, Nnenna noticed a pile of plates stacked haphazardly. Among them was a set of intricately designed china she hadn't seen earlier in the day. The plates were smelled with a dark reddish residue that didn't look like food. Funmi, what's that? She asked, holding up one of the plates. Fumi's face hardened. Just leftover stews. She replied curtly, snatching the plate from Nnenna's hands. The tension in the room was palpable. Nnenna decided not to push further, but her instinct told her to stay alert. Later, as she prepared to leave, Nnenna heard muffled sound coming from the backyard. She peeped through the window and saw Funmi and two men dragging more black bags towards a waiting van. The metallic smell from the kitchen was back. Determined to uncover the truth, Nnenna decided to follow the van. She hailed a keke and instructed the driver to maintain a safe distance. The van weaved through the city streets before stopping at a dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of Lagos. From her hiding spot, Nnenna watched as Funmi and her accomplice uploaded the bags. They walked quickly, their movement precise and coordinated. One of the men opened a bag and Nnenna felt her stomach turn. Inside was what happened to be a human hand, pale and lifeless. Nnenna stumbled back, her feet hitting a can that clattered loudly against the pavement. The sound echoed in the stillness of the night. Funmi froze, her head snapping towards the direction of the noise. "Who's there?" she called, her voice sharp and commanding. Panic surged through Nnenna. She turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound of footsteps followed, fast and unrelenting. Nnenna sprinted through the dark streets, her breath raged and her heart hammering in her chest. Lagos, which always seemed so alive and welcoming during the day, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows. The sound of footsteps behind her grew louder, quick and purposeful. Funmi's voice rang out in the distance, sharp and commanding. "Don't run, Nnenna. You're only making this harder for yourself." She turned a sharp corner and darted into a narrow alleyway. The walls were damp and the smell of garbage filled the air, but she didn't care. She crouched low behind a stack of old crates, pressing a hard hand over her mouth to stifle her breathing. Her mind raced with questions. What had she just seen? What was Funmi involved in? And most importantly, how would she escape? The sound of footsteps slowed, then stopped altogether. "Come out, Nnenna," Funmi called, her tone deceptively sweet. "You're making a big mistake, my dear. You don't understand what you've gotten yourself into." Nnenna stayed frozen, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would give her away. Minutes passed and the footsteps finally receded. Nnenna waited until she was sure they were gone before emerging from her hiding spots. She flagged down a passing keke and gave hurried directions to her apartment. As the vehicle sped through the streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. By the time Nnenna reached her apartment, her hands were trembling. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, struggling to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was Chike, her neighbor and friend, checking in to wish her a Merry Christmas. She hesitated before answering, unsure of how to explain what she had just experienced. "Chike," she began, her voice shaking. "Something terrible has happened." She recounted everything: the party, the strange guests, the black bags, and the horrifying discovery at the warehouse. Chike listened in stunned silence. When she finished, he said, "Nnenna, this is serious. "You can't handle this alone. I'll be right over." Within minutes, Chike was at her door. He looked as though he had come straight from his own family's Christmas gathering. "We need to go to the police," he said firmly. But Nnenna hesitated. Would the authorities believe her story? Would they even act on it? Lagos was full of corruption, and Funmi seemed like the kind of woman who had powerful connections. Chike suggested they gather more evidence before making any moves. "We can't go in blind," he said. "If Funmi is as dangerous as she seems, we need proof that can't be dismissed." The next day, Chike and Nnenna devised a plan. They would return to the warehouse under the cover of night to see if they could gather any incriminating evidence. Armed with Chike's old camera and flashlights, they set out after midnight. The warehouse was as ominous as Nnenna remembered. They approached cautiously, sticking to the shadows. Inside, the dark space was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The black bags were gone, but traces of blood stains remained on the floor, forming a gruesome trail leading deeper into the building. As they ventured further, they discovered a small room filled with strange objects, carved wooden figures, bottles of red liquid, and a large blood-stained altar. Nnenna felt bile rise in her throat. "What is this place?" she whispered. Chike didn't answer. He was too busy taking photos. Suddenly, the sound of a door creaking open sent a jolt of fear through them. They turned off their flashlights and crouched low. Voices echoed through the warehouse. It was Funmi and her accomplices. "We need to move everything by tomorrow," Funmi said sharply. "The police are getting too nosy." Chike and Nnenna exchanged a glance. They had had enough. As quietly as possible, they slipped out of the warehouse and made their way back to the safety of the streets. The next morning, Chike and Nnenna took their evidence to the police. The officers listened intently as they recounted their story, showing them the photos and describing the events of the previous night. To their surprise, the police took immediate action. "We have had our eyes on Mrs. Funmi for a while. She is suspected of being part of a ritualist group operating in Lagos." That evening, a raid was conducted on the warehouse. Funmi and her accomplices were arrested, and the grisly details of their activities came to light. They had been laundering unsuspecting victims to their parties, drugging their food, and using them for dark rituals. The special guests were members of their group, tasked with ensuring everything went smoothly. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. People were horrified to learn that someone they had trusted and celebrated with was capable of such evil. Funmi's house was abandoned, her once lively compound now a ghostly reminder of the horrors that had unfolded there. Life slowly returned to normal, but the memory of Funmi's action lingered. Nnenna became somewhat of a local hero for her bravery in exposing the truth. She and Chike grew closer, their friendship strengthened by the ordeal they had faced together. The following Christmas, Nnenna hosted her own celebration, invited only close friends and family. As she watched her guests laugh and enjoy in the feast she had prepared, she felt a sense of peace. But she could not help but share her story as a cautionary tale. "Christmas is a time for joy and togetherness," she told her guests. "But we must also be vigilant. Not everyone who invites you into their homes has good intentions." And so in that Lagos neighborhood, a new tradition was born. No one ate at a stranger's house on Christmas Day. The lesson was clear. Sometimes the most dangerous gifts come wrapped in kindness.